Hello and welcome back to Metacode. So today we are going to be going over the first two questions of the free response questions of the AP Computer Science exam from 2019. And so this is a two-part series where we'll go over the final two questions in the second video of this series. And each question is broken up into two parts, except for question 2, I believe, which is only one part. So without any further ado, let's get right on into the video. I believe I probably will upload a third video with both of the videos combined, just so that it's easier for you guys. Anyway, on to question 1, which reads, the AP Calendar class contains methods used to calculate information about a calendar. You will write two methods of the class. So we can look at the methods of the class, which is called AP Calendar. The first method, it says here, is called is leap year. It returns a Boolean, and it says here it returns true if year is a leap year and false otherwise. Okay. And we look at the next method, which is called number of leap years, and it returns number of leap years between year 1 and year 2, which are two parameters of the function or method. And we see here it says to be implemented in part A, which is means that for part A we are going to have to write this method. So let's scroll down to part A. Write the static method number of leap years, which returns the number of leap years between year 1 and year 2 inclusive. In order to calculate this value, a helper method is provided for you, which is called isLeapYear, which returns true if year is a leap year and false otherwise. So the first part of this is always to understand what do we need to do. And here it says we need to find the number of leap years between two parameters of this method, year 1 and year 2. So we can think of it, how many leap years are between 2010 and 2020? And we can look, and the way we would do that is we would go through each year between 2010 and 2020 and check if each year is a leap year. And it's easy for us to do that because we have our isLeapYear method. So let's just dive right into it. So first, what we're going to have to do, obviously, is to create an integer, and we can call this leap years. And we're going to set it to 0 because we clearly need a number to represent the number of leap years, because this is what's going to be returned at the end of the method. And then under this, we can check, just like I said earlier in our real-life example, we can check each year between year 1 and year 2. And we can do this, obviously, by using a for loop. And usually in Java, when we write for loops, we do for and then int I equals 0, and then I is less than however many times we want to run this. But it will be a lot easier for us if we just do for int I, which is int I equals year 1, which means that I will start on year 1 instead of starting on 0. And we can say I is less than or equal to year 2. And the reason we have the equal to sign is because we want, it says here inclusive, which means we need to count year 1 and year 2 both. So we have less than or equal to year 2. So this means that I is going to start at year 1 and then slowly go up to year 2 because we're adding 1 by doing I++ afterwards. So that's it. That is the for loop. And then inside the for loop, what do we want to do each time? Well, we want to check is the year that we're on currently a leap year or not. So we can say if, and then our helper method is leap year. And then we see that is leap year takes in a year to check if is it a leap year. We can just do I. And then we can either write equals true, but we don't have to, because if we remember, Java actually just automatically assumes that you are asking if something is true if you don't put anything. So if is leap year I, then we want to add 1 to leap years, because then we want our leap year number to go up. So leap years plus equals 1. So that's pretty much it for that problem. And of course, at the end of our method, we have to return leap years. So under the for loop, we can write return leap years. And that's it. We've got question 1A under our belt. And if you do this correctly, you would have received all 5 points in the exam. This question 1A is worth 5 points, 1B is worth 4, and each total question is worth 9 points. Okay, on to 1B. Write the static method day of week, which returns the integer value representing the day of the week for the given date, month, day, and year, where 0 denotes Sunday, 1 denotes Monday, and 6 denotes Saturday. For example, 2019 began on a Tuesday, and January 5th is the 5th day, so you would plug that into the function, and it would return 6, because apparently January 5th is a Saturday. So we have two helper methods here, which tell us the day of the year, and which is we just plug in month, day, and year. So say we want to plug in 3/1/2017, which will return 60 because that's the 60th day of the year. First day of year, which is our other method, will return whatever day the first day of the year is. So first, let's figure out what do we want to do. How are we going to structure this? So let's just go down to our code here. And the easy way to structure this is we can create one variable that will represent the first day of the year. Another variable that will represent the day of the year that we're looking for. So we plug in month, day, and year, and we get, say, it is the 60th day of the year. And then we'll have our final variable, which we are going to end up returning, which is going to be our start day plus our day of the year value. And then we have to find the remainder of that when it's divided by 7. And this is because there's 7 days in a week. So let's say that the first day of the year is a Saturday, and we want to have our day be the 60th day of the year. So 60 plus 6 is 66. But obviously that's not going to represent what day of the year it is. And then we have to subtract 1 on that. And that's because our days of the week are going from 0 to 6 instead of 1 to 7. So we're going to subtract 1. So let's say we get 65. Well, 65 is still not a day of the year that we want to have, because remember, 0 denotes Sunday up to 6 denotes Saturday. 65 is nowhere near that. But we have to find the remainder when it's divided by 7. So if the remainder is 0, then we know that it's a Sunday. If the remainder is 6, it's a Saturday. So let's go ahead and do that. Hopefully that made sense. Let me know if you have any questions at all. I could probably answer them a bit easier in the comments down below. So, int first day, we can call it, for first day of the year, equals first day of year, which is the name of our method. And then we're going to plug in our year, which is this year parameter. So we just write year. And then we create our second one, which represents our day of the year. So I'm going to say int day equals day of year. And then we have to plug in our month, day, year, which we can just use these parameters. Month, day, year. And that's that. Now it's time for our return value, the hard part, which I explained earlier not very well. So we can call it int return day. And equals. And now what we're going to put on this other side of the equals sign is, like I said, our start day. So let's say we start on a Saturday. So first day. And then we need to add on our day from here. First day plus day minus 1 And then, like I said earlier, we need to find the remainder when divided by 7, which is actually really easy to do with just the percent sign. We have our, let's say, if we didn't include this first day, if we just had day minus 1% 7, then it would always assume that first day is 0. But if first day is a 6, which is Saturday, then that's going to completely make our function wrong. So we need to add on our first day value. And then we obviously need to find the day. And like I said, subtract 1 because we're going from 0 to 6, not 1 to 7. And that's really it at that. Now, at the end, we just write return day. And that's it. 4 lines of code, and we've got it. This would get you a 4 out of 4 on this problem. So that's really cool. And now let's move on to number 2, the hardest one so far. This whole question is worth 8 points. So this is a pretty important one. Anyway, so let's see. This question involves the implementation of a fitness tracking system that is represented by the step tracker class. A step tracker object is created with a parameter that defines the minimum number of steps that must be taken for a day to be considered active. Now, right here, we know that we need our constructor to have a parameter because it says that our object is created with a parameter. So that means when we're creating our constructor for this class, we need to have a parameter, which is going to be the number of steps for a day to be considered active. Now, let's just move on. The step tracker class provides a constructor and the following methods. Add daily steps, which accumulates information about steps and readings taken once per day. Active days, which returns the number of active days, and average steps. So that seems all right. So let's start by writing the first part of a class that we always need. Public class step tracker. Now a lot of people overlook this, but we have to do this. And a lot of people forget it, and then they don't get credit for it, which is sad. And nobody doesn't want to get credit for stuff. So we just write public class step tracker. And then now we're going to have to create 4 variables. And these variables are very important. Now we know that we have our private int stuff. And these are important. So we're obviously going to need one that is going to be the number of days total that this is going on. Because in order to find the number of average steps, we need to find the number of days. Then we also need to have the minimum amount of steps to be considered active, which is very important as well. And then another value we're going to have is the total steps, which is going to be used obviously for our average again. Because we remember, in order to find the average, we have to find the total and divide it by the number of days. So total days divided by days is going to be equal to our days. And then our final variable is going to be the number of active days, which is going to be returned in the second function. So I like to always think about the 4 variables, or however many variables we're going to need. So we can write out these 4 variables. As we know, we have to use the private. So private int, and then we can call it min steps. And we're just going to declare these variables. And the reason we're declaring them up here before our constructor is because then they can be used throughout all of the methods in the class. Or else we could just declare them wherever we wanted. But we want these to be used in all of the functions, which is why we're declaring them at the top of the class. And then we have our min steps. We have next our total steps, private int total steps. And then our third variable is going to be private int num days, which is going to be the number of days. And then finally, we can have our final one, which we can call num active days. And the reason for I'm naming them these is because it's very simple to understand. In tests like this, you always want to name your variables exactly what you want them to get used for, because it's very easy to be confused about stuff, and you don't want variable names to be the reason that you mess up on the test. So let's create our first method, but before we do that, we have to make our constructor. So public step tracker, which we always know that our constructor has to have the same thing as our same name as our class. So now, before we move on, do you guys remember what I'm missing? If you don't, well, that's not very good, because remember, we said our object has to be created with a parameter which represents the number of active days. And so I think I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier for you guys to see. Okay, and so inside our step tracker object, our parameter is going to be, how about min active steps? And we have to put int here, int min active steps. And then, so this is going to be our number of min active steps, the minimum amount of steps that we need for a day to be considered active. And so we can set min steps equal to min active steps, because they represent the same thing. And so then the next thing we're going to do is let's just start everything off at 0. Total steps equals 0. Num days equals 0. And then num active days equals 0. And so this will start everything at 0. And later on in the methods, we will obviously update these. So now let's create our first method, which up here it says is going to be add daily steps, which accumulates information about steps and readings taken once per day. So here we go. We can call public, obviously, and then it's going to return nothing. So public void add daily steps, because there's nothing for this to return, because we're not returning an integer, we're just leaving it. And now obviously when we're returning daily steps, there's something we need to put in the parameters, which is going to be the number of steps that we had that day. So we can just call this steps. And the next thing we are going to do is let's add steps onto our total steps. And the reason for this is because, or else total steps won't be counted. So total steps plus equals steps. This should be pretty obvious, I guess. And then we have to add 1 to our number of days. So num days plus plus. And this is going to add 1 to num days because another day has passed. So we are just going to assume that this method will be called once per day. And every day we need to add on to our steps and add 1 to the number of days. Now, next thing we're going to have to do is check if the day was active. So obviously this can be done with a simple if statement. If our steps is greater than or equal to our min steps, which is our kind of our threshold for our number of active days, then we can add 1 to our number of active days, num active days. And the reason we're doing everything in this method is because we already have our int steps here. And this also, the reason we're also doing it there is because it makes our next thing a lot easier. Our next method is active days, which returns the number of active days. So public int active days, because it has to return the number of active days. And all we have to do for this method is return num active days. That's literally the whole method, because it's not asking us to do anything else. So num active days. Boom. And now we got our second method Done. And our final method is going to be average steps here, which is going to return the number of average steps per day, which we know how to do if you know how to do a mean in your math class, which is the number of days divided by the number of steps divided by the number of days. Then we can find steps per day, obviously. So public int, and then we can do average steps. I believe this has to return that value, but we can always check the problem. Sorry, I scrolled too high. Yes, okay. So we don't need any parameters for this, and we can make this a one-liner, or we don't have to if we don't want to. But let's just check first for if num days equals 0, because it's just kind of safe. If num days, actually, let's do double here, because we know that averages can end up being decimals, so we don't want to mess that up. And I believe that is a important part. You have to return a double, not an integer. So if num days equals 0, then we're going to return 0, obviously. And then else, which is basically all other times. So once we've started using this, then what we are going to do is we are going to return our steps divided by days. So we can do return, and then we know in Java the way to make something into a double is we can do double, and then next to this we do total steps, I believe is the name of the variable, total steps, divided by total days, I believe. Let me just check the name of the variable. I don't want you guys to get anything wrong. Num days. Total steps divided by num days. And that's it. That's it. That's the whole thing. We're done. So this is just checking. Is the number of days 0? If yes, return a double. Because if we just leave it at returning 0, it's going to return an integer, which we actually want it to return a double. So we just do return 0.0. And then if it's not, then we're going to return a double using our double function. And then total steps divided by num days. So that's it for today's video. On to part 2 we go. If you did enjoy and this helped, please drop a like. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.